Back in July of 2010, nearly 4 years ago, we released a video and tech special report titled Food, the Ultimate Secret. Today, I wanted to look at that original report, which is still extremely important and groundbreaking, and expand on it with some of the new news that dovetails with that special report. But before we re-air that from the archive, let's go ahead and get into some of those articles right now that are breaking as we speak. National Geographic is reporting that infertility in Spanish pigs has been traced to plastics. A warning for humans. Gee, what have I been telling you with medical doctors for at least 15 years about bisphenol A and other plastics that they put in the paper money, the printer ink, you name it. They've got hundreds of other plastics they could be using, but they don't. This is social engineering 101. And everyone that adopts Western systems, American systems, is basically becoming infertile and running chances of getting higher rates of cancer. So again, the rest of the story is this is being done by design more and more. Here's another headline in the medical tyranny section of Infowars.com. Farmers are seeing better animal health with non-GMO feeds. So many farmers that we talk to have gotten to the fact that their animals get sick or die when they're on these feeds. Here's another one from CBS News. Scientists, soda may lower semen quality because of the type of things that are put in soda that is so incredibly toxic. Here's another one. Study further confirms link between autism and pesticide exposure. The toxic pesticides. And what is one of the toxic pesticides that is being used on the crops? Well, that's hydrofluorosilicic acid and other fluoride variants that the Wall Street Journal even reported on a few years ago. The Food and Drug Administration has ordered to stop being used, but they still haven't phased it out yet, and it bioaccumulates inside of the major crops, you name it. It's not just added to the water. And even organic foods, in major tests, it's been shown that upwards of 45% of them actually aren't really organic. Another headline, radiation in tuna triples after Fukushima, new study shows. So there's just massive, massive levels of different toxins and GMO and radiation that we're getting hit with. And the reason we're covering all this here today is to not be negative, but is to point out the bad things that are happening and not just stick our head in the sand so we can reverse these trends. Now, I wanted to look at some of the areas where the establishment is striking back right now. They spent tens of millions of dollars in California last year to kill the initiative to label GMO on the label. I mean, big deal. Obviously, we should know what is in our food. We should know what's being added to our water. But there's intimidation going on. Now in Vermont's labeling of GMO law is now being targeted by a lawsuit by the trade groups that don't want you to know so that you can't make those choices. But it doesn't matter. We're turning the tide. People are simply going out and finding things that are labeled organic and checking with consumer associations to ensure that that company really has been tested. And so voting with our dollars, we're changing the world. And I'm going to get to more of that here in a moment with solutions. Again, Europe is banning American apples that are GMO and that also have different chemicals sprayed on them. They're voting with their euros. Just this month, Kyrgyzstan was the latest nation of 5.5 million people to completely ban GMOs, and this is starting to happen all over the world. Communist nightmare China, complete with mobile execution vans, suicide nets, and forced abortions, is the global leader in GMO, genetic engineering, cross-species pollution. But the United States, don't worry, is a close second. And the world is simply banning the toxic medications and toxic foods produced in the United States and China. And that's a good thing because that's the only leverage the world has and that we have is simply not eating this stuff. And that's why they are fighting right now to make sure no one knows what's in their food and has no choice. And that's why the Food Babe launched a few weeks ago on our show and was successful within 24 hours to get major beer producers to admit they're not really producing beer and that it's just flavored alcoholic syrup, and to basically list that so people can now put pressure on them to start changing the ingredients back to actually being real brewed beer. So that's now beginning. And she and others were able, with our show working in tandem, you the listeners and viewers out there, to get Subway within 1 week to remove a plastic filler that they had in their bread. And she had another big victory thanks to our listeners. She continues to launch it on our show. We're very honored that our listeners are so active to get Chick-fil-A to agree to serve antibiotic-free chicken, which, again, there's so many reasons you don't want to eat chicken full of antibiotics. It's just incredibly toxic long-term and creates superbugs and lowers your own immune system. And there's other solutions out there like honey, the solution for antibiotic-resistant superbugs, and new studies that are breaking that down as well. It's not just good for suppressing allergies, but also for boosting your immune system. So that's just some of the positive things that are happening out there. Now I want to go back to the report from the archive 4 years ago, Food, the Ultimate Secret. If you're a radio listener, we will post this entire video and expanded special report to prisonplanet.com and Infowars.com at the end of the radio show today, so you can view, not just listen to these reports, and see all the news articles, video clips, and news documentation for yourself. My friends, the information that you are about to witness from all of my years of research is the most important. It's been hidden in plain view the entire time. This is the ultimate secret, and it's about to be exposed. I have hundreds of government documents, textbooks, white papers, where for over 80 years, the elite of the Western world have talked about adulterating food and water to sicken and sterilize the population for the purpose of eugenics. It's all covered in the book Eco Science, written by the White House science czar John P. Holdren, where they talk about a planetary police state to carry out the forced sterilization. They also talk about covert systems in the water and food to sterilize the population. Now, this was written decades ago, before he was White House science czar. Now, suddenly, the stuff in this book is all over the news. They're selling it to the public as if it's a good thing. You see here before you what an average person would buy when they went shopping at the store. Not everything here is bad for you, but much of it has compounds and artificial chemicals that have been added that are extremely toxic and bad for your health. And they have known this the entire time, and they have approved them for use. Let's start with aspartame. You cannot go to the grocery store now and buy any type of even regular sugar gum that hasn't had aspartame added to it. In the 1970s, Searle tried to get it approved, and they couldn't. It took them 3 separate times because in their own studies with monkeys, large portions of them that were fed it died and contracted cancer. Now we have mainstream news articles, and the EU has done a major study finding lower birth weights, early birth, and yes, miscarriages from women that drink aspartame-laden soft drinks like Coke Zero. What is aspartame? It is the fecal matter of the E. coli bacteria. They took it and genetically engineered it. They can feed it toxic waste, and then it defecates aspartame. And it has so many bad health effects, it's just unspeakable. This is being done by design. It's also very, very addictive. But let's just go ahead and move away from aspartame and talk about McDonald's and chicken McNuggets. Now, I remember a decade ago or so reading health advisories claiming that a form of plastic that's used in silly putty, basically a type of silicone, was in the chicken McNuggets, but also in many other TV dinners and other foods. It is illegal in every other nation in the world to add these chemicals to the food, but it's not in the United States. The big secret is all of this was done by design by the FDA. Look at all the drugs they've approved, and then it comes out later that they knowingly approve them when these drugs are causing heart attacks and cancer. In the Nuremberg trials, it came out that the Nazis were adding sodium fluoride to the water supply in the labor camps and death camps to make the population more docile and controllable. There had been hundreds of university studies before Hitler even came to power. This is a form of forced medication. They admit that 1 part per million of sodium fluoride more than doubles the chance of bone cancer in boys and men. As the public became educated in the last few decades, the government and industry's response was to not just put it in water, but to start adding it to thousands of products like children's water that's mixed with their formula or with their cereal. They started adding as much as 900 parts per million in things like powdered eggs.